you're basically shaming yourself if you start to go into the blue or the red. It's like blue, red, bad, green, good. I'm a big fan of the bottom-up practices, which tend to be kind of using our physiology to, as humans, we have this remarkable capacity to buffer our emotions for later. A lot of those words like betray, which aren't really, it's not really an emotion, it's more of like a sensation plus a story. A nice guy is typically like a people pleaser and is not connected to his anger, versus someone who has the capacity to be angry and, like defend if that is necessary to stand up for himself. That is a kind of
On the show today, Jonny Miller. So he is Mr. Nervous System Mastery. That's his course, which I've done, and it's good. It's good. It's really clear, really straightforward, some practical, accessible stuff. He's also the host of the Curious Humans podcast. They've had all sorts of great people on. And yeah, we were in touch years ago, briefly through the Embodiment conference and living in Brighton together. But now from the other side of the world, welcome, Jonny.
it's great to be here, Mark. Yeah, great to reconnect.
Let's dive in. Everyone seems this weird mixture of wired and tired now. Why do you
Mm.
think that is?
Mm. I mean, yes, we could spend the whole podcast unpacking that question. I mean, there is obviously so much going on in the world right now. I think our dopamine systems are getting fried somewhat. Loneliness is increasing. I mean, there's so many different factors. I think the one that I kind of like to come back to is we weren't really taught how to uh, listen to and then work with our nervous system in a skillful way. So as a result, we are somewhat kind of at the mercy of like an increasingly chaotic and slightly fucked up kind of set of circumstances. And so I think it's challenging for, almost everyone right now with the pace of AI and everything that's going on in the world. I don't think there's many people who are, walking through life completely calm and collected. But yeah, I mean, so many reasons. I don't think I need to kind of talk about all of the increasing uncertainty, which is very challenging for nervous systems. Phone addiction is a huge one. Um, Increasing loneliness, lack of co-regulation is a big piece as well. Uh, yeah, I mean,
The big question with a few answers, but that at least sort of lays out some territory for us. Let's go to the sort of how then. So I really enjoy the clarity of how you talk about nervous system health. So what is it that's actually going on nervous system wise for
mhm.
people that are subject to the conditions you just mentioned?
Mm. Yeah, so I think about it in the sense of like there's two modes of reactivity that our nervous systems have. There's hyperarousal and hypoarousal. And everyone kind of leans towards one or the other generally. Hyperarousal with an E is essentially when we get frustrated or overwhelmed or angry, it's like too much energy in the system, and we're unable to kind of be present and stay grounded with. And then hypoarousal is I kind of think of it as like the fuse switch in the nervous system, where it's like shut down, collapse, emotional withdrawal, kind of stonewalling. And those are basically the body's two defense mechanisms when the amount of kind of stimulus, both internal and external, goes outside of our window of tolerance, our capacity to be with that intensity. And that window can obviously be trained and increased. But I think it's just good to like be aware of those are two, ways in which we typically just respond to stress.
Nice, nice. I know in the past you were using polyvagal theory as survive, for example, in my work in Ukraine,
Mm,
describing dorsal vagal shutdown and
mm,
sympathetic arousal.
mhm,
It seems like it's had some criticism. Some people
mhm,
just find it unhelpful to sort of hear the big words. Are you using that model or have you
mm.
moved away from it?
Yeah, great question. I still find it somewhat useful. I had a conversation on my podcast recently with this neuroscientist Mike Johnson, and he said he thinks it's generally wrong but practically helpful. And I and
Right,
I,
like three
I
brain theory or something, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I tend to agree with that approach. I think where where it can be problematic is where people start labeling the kind of blue and red zones as like inherently bad. I mean, through the lens of parts work, you're basically just like shaming yourself if you start to go into the blue or the red. It's like blue, red, bad, green, good. And I think that oversimplification can be problematic for sure. I think it's helpful to view, uh, you know, increase like embodied safety as being like a core piece of coming back into regulation. I think that's very helpful. I think there's a lot of helpful aspects to it.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it can also kind of get you into trouble at the same time.
Yeah, we've had Stephen Porges and Deb Stainer on. I value them both very much. You know, we
Hmm.
used sort of use that work a lot. And as you
Hmm.
said, it's something can be useful, but not always technically right. And then it can also lean in
Exactly.
certain directions. Like I find the leaning towards a sort of safety as an emphasis on that great
Hmm.
for therapy, but maybe not great for robust adults in the real world. That
Mm,
emphasis.
mm, mm.
So sometimes these things are a matter of emphasis and what's underlined in red in the model kind of thing.
Right. So do you still teach it yourself? Or like, how do you incorporate it in your work?
The Send Ukraine team uses a charity I set up. They use a traffic lights model, which is sort of a loose adopted version. When
Hmm.
people are getting shot at and in bomb shelters, they need things to be quite simple. But it's the sort of behind the
Mm,
traffic lights model that we use. And for the when they
yeah.
teach doctors and things who are a bit more scientific, they can then get the sort of science out. But they
Hmm.
don't. You know, we've got a SpongeBob SquarePants version for the kids with four different SpongeBob characters. So you know, there's different ways to teach things, right?
Nice. Yeah, great. I love that.
Shall we do a quick ape together? So on your course, there's this little ape thing. It's a bit like what we would call centering, and
Mm.
you know, I'm happy but quite tired today. So a little ape with you might be helpful.
Great. Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. I could use it myself as well. All right. Well then, let's get comfy in our seats. Um, feeling the feet on the floor. Any little stretching that needs to happen. Usually like to start by taking a little centering breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Hmm. So let's begin by just noticing, and ape for context is really a kind of awareness practice, and it's really good for cultivating interoception, which is this kind of internal sense of somatic awareness. I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar. So we're going to be walking through A, awareness, P, posture, E, emotion. So get settled in your body, and I like to start by just noticing like how is my awareness right now? Like, does it feel expansive? Is it contracted? Am I aware of the space like behind me? So I rarely am. Aware of the space to the sides of me, and then also like above my head. Usually like visualize a few feet above my head, and then down below my feet. And then usually the body starts to settle a little bit once the awareness kind of expands. And then again, just purely noticing like how is your posture? Do you feel like naturally upright and easeful? Is there like, is there kind of like imbalance or maybe some like kinkedness going on? And again, no need to like readjust anything, but some like natural adjustments might just happen as a result of bringing your awareness to it. So just stay with the inquiry around your posture right now. And then finally exploring, just really asking the question of like what sensations or emotions are present in this moment. And it might be maybe there's like a little tightness somewhere, maybe there's a little heat somewhere, maybe there's, I mean, for me right now, there's a sense of like excitement and like enthusiasm and like activation energy I'm noticing. Um, there's like a slight tightness behind my eyes. Yeah, and just from there, I like to kind of end by feeling my feet on the floor and then coming back to my breath, taking a breath in, and letting it go, and then opening up the eyes again if they've been closed, and coming back. Think of it as like a kind of internal mini weather report check-in. Like what's the weather like inside?
Fantastic. Love it. Love it. I think you're a fan of little and often, like I am, right? Like doing these little practices and
Totally.
throughout the day. My girlfriend and
Exactly.
I, we're studying your work and a couple of other nervous system people. And we'll just do little practices throughout the day, a quick VU before lunch and things like that, little
Yeah.
check-ins. So
That's the way to
helpful.
do it, man. Yeah, that's definitely it's like all of these like micro things. It doesn't have to be a big like 15, 20 minute thing can just be peppered in throughout the day.
Let's lay out a few foundations for people then. So I like your sort of skill set model of looking at nervous system rather than just theory or esoterica. So you
Mhm.
talk about interoception. Do you want to lay out some of the main skill sets involved in this?
Yes, totally. So I really like this approach because it frames nervous system work as basically like skill acquisition that you can kind of like identify and isolate. And the three main pillars for me, there's more, but I think the three central ones are interoception, which is essentially to what degree are you aware of your internal landscape? And it can be everything from like, basic shit like hunger or 20 to use the bathroom to like really subtle nuance like contractions or emotions that are arising. So that's one category. The second is self-regulation, which is a big one that people kind of come to the course for. Basically, like how can I stay present and grounded in increasingly intense scenarios? That's the kind of window of tolerance piece that we touched on. And then the third one, which can really take a lifetime to master, I call emotional fluidity. And this is essentially to what degree can you welcome the full spectrum of your emotional experience as it's arising. And that, there's a whole body of work there as well. So
I'm
those are the
I'm a
three.
British man, Johnny. I'm going to skip that last one, okay?
Yeah, great. Yeah. You just press it down, push it down further. Yeah, that doesn't
Maybe we'll
doesn't end
come back.
badly at all.
We can come back to culture later, actually, because as people that have traveled a lot, I think it's kind of interesting the British cultural piece when you live abroad and
Yeah,
see the different sort of
totally.
takes on emotion and the body, those kind of
I,
things.
I view myself as a recovering Brit. Yeah.
A recovering Brit. I like it. I like it. What defines health then in this model? So some people are like constantly trying to keep, I want to keep in ventral vagal, I want to keep in calm the
Mm.
whole time. The yogis who are trying to keep calm and repressing their anger. What defines health through this model?
Mm. Great question. So I think about it in terms of how adaptive is your nervous system in the sense of are you responding appropriately to the stimulus? Because we might have a stimulus, let's say like a friggin' tiger comes through. Like I would want my nervous system to go for like right into fight flight immediately. Like that would be an appropriate response. Um, I think about this through the lens of to what degree can I live intentionally? And I view my kind of like reactive patterns, that's like my triggers, like the things that activate me and get me outside of that window where I kind of respond unskillfully. That takes me away from living with intentionality and with agency. It like reduces the options that I'm kind of that I have available in each moment. So I really think of like the journey of nervous system mastery as um, decreasing the half-life of reactivity. I think it's quite a helpful phrase. So, someone at the beginning of this, maybe they get angry about something, someone cuts them up in traffic, and then they're pissed for like the next like 2 or 3 days. Like it doesn't kind of fade. And sometimes, sometimes it gets worse, it exacerbates. But over time, you can reduce this half-life to maybe it's like 2 days, maybe 2 hours, 2 minutes. And so I don't think it's realistic to think we're not going to get triggered by stuff in life. That doesn't seem like the goal to me.
Great.
It's more of like
Great.
how do we respond to that skillfully when it arises and come back to baseline without it completely derailing us?
Right. So it's about range, it's about awareness, it's about choice. I mean, there's a nice
Mhm.
video on your YouTube channel, which is very good, by the way. Lovely YouTube channel. I'm a
Thank you.
connoisseur of YouTube channels, having had 600 guests on and checked them all out. This one, life's a video game. Here's the cheat codes, right? So this idea of
Hmm.
like, this isn't just for trauma. It isn't just stress management. This is a
Hmm.
whole system for enhancing our life.
Mm. Yeah, so I like the as a video game nerd myself, I was obsessed with Legend of Zelda. I kind of realized that the heart meter that you have in these RPG games is somewhat analogous to life. Like you kind of wake up, maybe your heart meter is like 8 out of 10, and you go through the day, stuff happens, and your capacity gets reduced. And there are things that you can do to both bring your capacity back to its usual full level, like
So
something
that's like
like
the energy bar. Sorry, the heart meter
yeah,
is
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
energy, like okay, how
Exactly.
much
Yeah,
life
yeah.
you've
Like
got left, kind
how
of
much
thing.
life force you have
Uh,
available, and stuff like a yoga nidra or a humming practice that'll kind of like bring you back up a little bit. And then there's also, you can expose yourself to deliberate stress, like eustress, and as long as you recover sufficiently, then your overall capacity meter, your window of tolerance basically expands over time. And so I just thought it was quite a fun metaphor to view this work. And I've even started thinking about, my daily life, like, oh, I'm noticing my like energy capacity meters going down, like beep, beep, beep. Like I need to to kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
uh, do a practice or something.
I had one earlier today. I was like, is what I'm doing sustainable? Because I know important podcast for me, this, wanting to do well with this, teaching an important event, one of our big trainings afterwards. And I was like,
Hmm.
am I working sustainably today? Because I want to be
Hmm.
on good form for 5 and 6 p.m. And I could feel that bar going down because I was rushing, I was tense, and I was like, okay, that
Yeah.
won't do. That won't do.
What do you do in that situation? Like, let's say it's not
Pause,
sustainable.
stop, come back onto my heels, maybe take a breath. There's lots of things I do for the day that I'm sure you recommend too. The centering practices, VU breath.
Hmm.
I just went for a walk outside in nature and nice cool air before this, just to upregulate a little
Mm.
bit, to get a bit of energy,
Hmm.
get my blood flowing and get a bit of nature around me. So
Yeah,
yeah, the
nice.
whole spectrum of things. What do you find works with your clients best? Is it different things for different people, or are there a few classics that work best for the self-regulation side?
Yeah, it's definitely different things for different people. I think I like the kind of like I like stacking the kind of practices and the way that I delineate them. I think about top down, bottom up, and outside in. So outside in might be exactly as you just described, going outside, getting some fresh air, changing your environment, which we're kind of constantly co-regulating with the whole time. Even like the quality of light, sound, all of these things, they're kind of like tuning the instrument of our nervous system. Um, but I'm a big fan of the bottom up practices, which tend to be kind of using our physiology to literally shift our state. So I really like humming. I kind of hum all the time. Um, Long hold stretching can be really good. Extended exhale breathing. I particularly like the alternate nostril breathing. I don't quite know. There haven't really been studies as to why is it more effective. I think it's because there's like a smaller aperture that the air is going through. I think that's part of it. And there's also a piece around like it being connected to different brain hemispheres. But for whatever reason, the alternate nostril breathing with extended exhale I find useful. Um, yeah, and then awareness-based practices as well, just kind of like we just did at the beginning of this. And then there's also, the top-down pieces as well, which I do find helpful as well. Reframing of like, oh, I'm stressed because I really care about this. Like this podcast, it actually really matters to me, and so it's kind of good that I'm activated to some degree. Um,
The
yeah,
bottom up, more the embodied practices, top down, more like CBT, cognitive reframing,
precisely,
this kind of piece. Yeah.
precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard you use this concept of emotional debt. I thought that was a useful concept too.
Mm,
Want to explain that
yeah.
one?
Yeah, so emotional debt, I think of so I have like a background in tech and startups, and in that world, when you're building software or products, often you kind of build in a way that's kind of like scrappy in the beginning, and you accumulate what's known as technical debt. And that is necessary in the beginning, but if the technical debt remains, it causes fragility in the product, in the code over time, and basically causes it to break. And I think the same is true with our emotions, in the sense of it's very useful, let's say in a stressful scenario. I don't know, let's say like you're in a boardroom, high stakes boardroom negotiation. Like you don't necessarily want to like fully process whatever your emotions are in that moment. Um, but so it's useful to be able to, and as humans, we have this remarkable capacity to buffer our emotions for later. And that's
Right.
essentially what I think of as emotional debt. But, like with taking out a huge loan, like you want to at some time repay that. And if you don't repay it, then it will cause, in technical terms, a buildup of allostatic load in the nervous system, which causes fragility, burnout, health challenges, the whole gamut of things that people generally don't want in their life.
Yeah, I think of it often as sort of emotional indigestion as well. People aren't digesting things, and
Yeah.
the
Yep.
lack of space is a big problem there. Like space
Hmm.
and time in the day, or times when information isn't coming. I notice when I sit down
Hmm.
to meditate or I go for a walk in nature, I'm just playing catch up with all the things I haven't felt in my rushed life for the last 24 hours.
Yeah, yeah. I actually went for a walk with a friend on the beach yesterday, and he described it as like space work. Like he thinks about it as a practice of like creating spaciousness in his life, because without that, you're right. Like the other stuff it's really hard to digest everything that's happening, like, both mentally and emotionally.
Let's sprinkle a bit of spice in here now. Nervous system health. Often people are thinking like trauma and their stress, which is good. I'm into all that. But let's talk about sex. How is this going to improve our sex lives?
That's great. Um, how is it going to improve our sex life? Well, I would say a large. Never had this question on the podcast before.
Well,
Um,
another way of saying it, just to give you a moment, might be how can nervous system awareness get us laid more, better, more and better? So, is it like, hey, I'm tuned into my girlfriend, I'm able to upregulate her, then downregulate? I mean, that's flirting, right? Flirting is up and down regulating in a
to, to,
sequence, as far as I can tell.
totally. I mean, there's actually a lot of interesting parallels here. I mean, I think one that comes to mind is just having an increased capacity for intensity. I think a lot of people likely disassociate to some degree whilst they're making love, whilst they're having sex, and the ability to kind of be present to your moment by moment experience actually creates a sense of like safety and connection, which is often what partners are seeking. And I mean, I think of in some ways nervous system mastery as like creating a secure attachment with reality and also like increasing our capacity to stay connected to ourselves. And if we're not connected to ourselves, we can't be connected to someone else.
Right.
And so it's unlikely to be a satisfying sexual connection if you are not like emotionally as well as physically connected with your partner. So I think that's a huge piece. And also knowing like how to like up and down regulate your own system to kind of find that sweet spot. Where yeah, I mean, there's lots of directions you could go there as well. But I mean, I think in many ways, sex is probably a beautiful mirror and training arena for nervous system mastery, actually.
It strikes me that most women find men attractive who are a mixture of stimulating and calming. So if they're just
Hmm.
calming,
Hmm.
that's the nice guy, you're in the friend zone. And if they're just scary, like stimulating, well, that's just scary. That's not pleasant to anyone, right? But if it's like a bad
Hmm.
boy who's a nice guy, or a
Hmm.
fireman, or a pirate, but he's not going to hurt you. So it's that mixture of safety and excitement. That just seems directly from polyvagal theory to me.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, and I think there's also a piece around like this comes back to the emotional fluidity piece around like a nice guy is typically like a people pleaser and is not connected to his anger versus someone who has the capacity to be angry and like defend if that is necessary to stand up for himself. That is a kind of very attractive quality, and I think that's a direct reflection of like to what degree are you in touch with your own anger, not in a way where you're like aggressive towards other people, but if that's necessary, you can bring it forward, and that's experienced by women often as like, oh, I feel safe around him, like I
Right,
feel
right.
like he feels grounded and not just like up in his head the whole time.
Capacity for sort of protective boundary setting and in being in touch with yourself is just attractive for men and women, I think, right? Like it's just an
100%.
attractive thing. Let's talk about more the relational side, so sort of kind of segueing here. So I've noticed people, I think you've made the same observation, tend to fall into easily unsympathetic. Like I tend to get irate a lot. That's my thing. I tend not to be exhausted and shut down, and but I can go there, but generally not.
Hmm.
Many of my partners in the past have been the opposite. They tended to
Hmm.
be in a little bit more like shut down. I wonder if there's almost like a regulatory thing. Like I wake my girlfriend up a little bit, she calms me down a little bit. Like there's a sort of co-regulation because of how we're set. Is that
Mm.
just me, or is that something you've come across before?
Well, I mean, maybe there's a regulation component in there as well. I think it's also that like we find romantic partners often who kind of like are like our opposite match in a way. So like I'm the opposite to you. Like my kind of reactive default is to kind of more shut down and withdraw, and my partner is to kind of get more aggressive. And I think there's a way in which we find, yeah, almost like our mirrors, so that we can hopefully, have a kind of loving space where we can be held through all this stuff that comes up in partnership. And I think, long term partnership is probably one of the most powerful healing kind of spaces that exists if it's approached right.
Yeah, and I hope it's okay to go there, but I know your journey started with the loss of a partnership, right? Really,
Mm,
really tough one. Is
mm.
that something you're comfortable to talk about?
Yeah, no, of course. So the context in the story is I was engaged to an amazing woman called Sophie Spooner. She was working as a junior doctor in the UK NHS medical um, service industry, and she was diagnosed with bipolar. This was before we met, and I said like 90 to 95% of the time she was just like amazing, like high energy, super creative, super sensitive and compassionate. And then, yeah, maybe like 5% of the time, she just have these overwhelming, often like anxiety attacks. And one of these happened when I was in Portugal. We'd been traveling together. She came home early to go back to work. She'd taken time off work, and she was triggered by something that happened at work, and it sent her into an anxiety attack. And she came home and overdosed on her own medication, and she ended up taking her own life. And so this was really, I mean, for me, I'd never experienced anything like emotionally, yeah, nothing like close to that in my life. I'd had a kind of fairly easy upbringing in childhood, and this really like broke me in a really, I think, in hindsight, in a really beautiful way.
Mm,
And the process of grief was actually the thing that kind of opened up the doorway to like how emotionally repressed I'd been to, in many other ways. Like I hadn't considered myself as being like emotionally repressed. I just thought I was normal. Um, but it kind of highlighted how yeah, just like how out of touch with my own, like numb from the neck down is kind of like how I think about myself, looking back now. And in hindsight, it led me to all of these embodiment practices, to breath work, to meditation, to working with entheogens, things like that. And it was really my kind of portal into how important this work is, and grief in particular. I think like what I think I learned in the journey of processing grief was how important it was to actually just like surrender and allow it. Like I thought about it as almost
mm,
like successive like tsunami waves that
right.
could come at really any fucking time. Like you don't know. Like I remember one came when I was in like a public train station, and it just like triggered a memory of that we had together, and it just like broke me. I just like
Yeah.
fell on the floor, just like bawling. And that was really the journey for me, was like, to what degree can I just like allow this to move through and not try and resist it. And I noticed that when I resisted it, when I literally physically like tensed against it, that like it created discomfort. And so, yeah, and this is really a beautiful metaphor for the nervous system work, is like, to what degree can you just like allow and soften whatever it is that wants to come through?
Mm, mm. I've also been touched by suicide, and I noticed a lot of the guests who are doing this kind of work have had something really rough happen to them. I mean, bad things
Hmm.
happen to everyone, right? But not everyone has a partner who kills himself, or
Hmm.
a lot of the guests come out of abuse backgrounds, or very serious things. And it seems like something cracks people open and hits them, as you say, with these waves that you just have to surrender to. And there's
Hmm.
no fighting it, right? That cracks something open in people.
Hmm. Well, I think everyone fights it to some degree in the beginning. I actually have what another thing that really helped me during this time, actually when I was living near you in Brighton, I would swim around the pier in the pretty freezing
Mm,
water, and
mm.
there's a kind of beautiful analogy to like, when you first get in water that's that cold, like your entire body just like like you just like clench your sphincter, clench every single muscle. And then as you kind of sit with it, you begin to kind of like relax and open to the cold. And the cold almost like feels like it's like seeping into your bones. And then after, let's say 10, 15 minutes, you actually feel great. Like you feel a sense of like aliveness, and all of the dopamine and endorphins are kicking in as well. But I think that's actually a nice metaphor for grief. It's like in the beginning, it is too much to kind of take, but then as you kind of like soften and open, and being held and supported by other people is really key in that as well. Which I was very fortunate to have some very caring people around me at the time. But I think that's kind of the process. It's like you do just like gradually soften and let it almost like it feels like carving. The way I thought of it was like carving out my capacity to feel love is actually what it felt like grief was, and I felt like it expanded my ability and capacity to feel and experience love in all areas of life. Which it's interesting to be grateful for the process of grief, whilst at the same time, if I could go back and change something, of
Yeah.
course, I would do something differently.
Yeah. Yeah. We were probably in the sea at the same time. I used to swim in the sea nearly every day.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
what kept me sane during the Embodiment conference is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sort of poof hit of the sea and just to
it's so
knock a lot of
good.
stuff out. Love it. Love it. Whew. Yeah. Let's talk about canaries. I love the canaries piece I got from your course yesterday. I was just listening to it
Nice.
yesterday, talking about cognitive canaries. What's
Mm.
that?
Yeah, so for people who aren't familiar, this is pretty dark, but in the mining days, they would take canaries into coal mines, and when the canary would die, essentially, that was a sign that like, oh, it's toxic. We have to get the hell out of here. And in a similar vein, I think it's really helpful to almost do like an inventory of ourselves, like in the 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10 like triggers or the times when we get activated, like what are the thought loops that are happening, what are the somatic markers, to use Damasio's term, that are arising, so that you can kind of look back and say, oh hey, I remember last time I had this like thought loop running, or last time I felt this like tightness in my chest, it escalated to like a panic attack or whatever the thing is. And I think having kind of the self-awareness and this inventory of somatic markers and also like patterns or thought loops that typically, if
Right.
uh, left to continue on their current trajectory, lead to like intense reactivity in certain forms. And so I think it's really helpful to just like be aware of what those are for yourself, and then to kind of choose a different path when they start to arise. Some form of self-regulation.
Right, because our nervous system is the way we see the world. It's the way we think. It's the way we relate. And I have one which is if I say the word betrayed, I know I've lost it because that's not a word I normally use. And if it's
Mm.
like it's become like a joke in my household. It's like everyone's betrayed me, and then I catch myself
Uh-huh.
thinking that, and I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
buddy,
yeah.
this is you. This is your state at this point. You don't
Yeah.
live around nefarious people. So
That's great. And I think actually like a lot of those words like betray, which aren't really, it's not really an emotion, it's more of like a sensation plus a story. And I think that's also like a helpful frame of like emotions are a combination of like physical sensations plus the stories that we make of them. And betrayal has like a very clear like, okay, there's a story potentially disempowering that is being told in this moment. Like, oh, interesting. Let's explore that.
like it. Let's talk ADHD. I'm on a ADHD podcast in a month, and it's quite a big one. So I'm just going to be purely selfish here. I need to learn about
Mm.
ADHD, and I think you're doing some work now on neuroatypicalities generally and nervous system, right? Because the way most people talk about nervous system is we've all got the same one, and I sure as haven't fuck got the same one as most people. I can tell you that. So
Mhm.
yeah, what's your take on nervous system health and ADHD?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, here I'm like learning from my students as much as anything. Because probably like 10-15% of our students right now are self-diagnosed or ADHD or neurotypical, so ADHD adjacent. I mean, one thing that I think is interesting is that uh, people with ADHD tend to have much lower levels of interoception. And so it's actually part of the challenges with self-regulation are just they're not like as aware of like what's
Right.
happening in their body until it becomes like an 8 or 9 or a 10 out of 10. And so I think practices like non-sleep deep rests, yoga nidra, like the Ape practice to kind of increase that sense of somatic awareness can be really, really helpful. And I think, yeah, I mean, as you said, like realizing that their nervous systems will be wired differently and typically more sensitive as well to external stimuli. And so being maybe more aware of like the environments they put themselves in. There
Like
was a really
background
interesting
noise and things like this. So.
background noise, things like that. Lights as well can be a big one, particularly
Mhm.
like after sunset, like really bright kind of overhead lights can really impact sleep. I mean, it does for everyone, but people with ADHD tend to be a little bit more sensitive. And there was this was actually, I think, a study for autism, but it was basically looking at like design recommendations and criteria for autistic people who were just basically more sensitive than the average person. And it was everything from like the colors of the paint that was used to having like rounded corners to like acoustic design. And I think it's really interesting to kind of look through the lens of like how space is constant, how we're co-regulating with the spaces and the people around us.
You're good
Um,
at this, right? Your sense of sort of design, house design, stuff on bedroom on your course, and
mm,
what nervous system state is being created by my office? Is it chaos? Is it creativity? Is it calm? Like, what a
totally.
great question, huh? This is your
Totally.
question,
And even like I don't know, like the height of the ceiling. Like
right?
if it's a high vaulted ceiling, it's better for kind of creative, more like abstract work. Whereas if you're in a smaller space, you'll be better for like analytical kind of left brain spreadsheet stuff. So it's not that like one is better or worse. It's more of like, do I want to be more like upregulated right now, or do I actually would it be better to be a little bit calmer maybe?
Yeah, environments help a lot. A lot of green plants help me, but I've noticed with
Mm,
my ADHD over the years, I've just got better at noticing like bright lights and loud noises and background noises and just cutting them out and going, I get in a taxi now and I'll just ask them to turn the radio off as soon as I get in. It
hmm
destroyed my Uber rating actually. So, but other than that, it's been
Seems
4.5 now, Johnny. I've
seems
got a
like a
problem. If it goes
small
any
price
lower
to
than
pay.
it's 4.5, I get banned from Uber.
They
It's a
they're
problem.
just not going to pick you up.
So no one looks at it. They don't care. Okay, let's talk about totally different topic. I bet you never got asked about this. Ethics, morality, different ways to talk about it. So
Uh-huh.
traditional religions would say that ethics was a big part of what we would now call self-regulation. So the Buddhists, for example, would
Mm,
say, if you didn't keep the basic precepts of Buddhism, good luck meditating because your mind's going to be a mess.
hmm
Whereas in modernity, we've replaced most of the ethical moral narrative, which say would have been a part of, say, medieval Catholic psychology, or Islamic psychology, Buddhist psychology. That's been
hmm
replaced with more like everything's psychologically deterministic, and sort of ethics is not really a part of it, right? It's sort of
hmm
not really about goodness anymore. What role do you think the good, as in the good life, the good,
hmm
has in our nervous system?
Mm, That's a fucking beautiful question. I studied ethics in philosophy at university. That was like was a thing I
Love
majored
it.
in.
We're gonna
So
so geek out.
so I mean, I don't want to take us down like kind of like Aristotelian rabbit hole here, but
Do it. Do
let's
it.
see. I mean, what came up for me like first was actually it was actually like the word integrity and how
Mhm.
what I think of as, let's say, like nervous system mastery is essentially like your entire musical instrument is like in tune. Like you are like on like, a good like G note. Like there's nothing about your kind of system of parts that is out of tune. And so when we kind of make an action that is, let's say, out of integrity, and by integrity here I think everyone has like a sense of like when they are in or out of integrity. Maybe they can point to like a specific thing that they did, or maybe it's just, oh, I don't feel like I'm in integrity right now. There's often a tension in the body that creates. And
Yes.
not to get kind of too technical here, but I've been researching this theory around vasocomputation from this amazing guy, Mike Johnson. And essentially, I think the more tension, he describes them as like latches in the vasomuscular system, the more tension that we have, the more dysregulated we become. And so, in many ways, I think there's an interesting overlap here with like the degree to which you are living a life that is in integrity, which is, likely overlaps with the typical more religious frameworks of like the good, then the more that you're able to live in kind of like alignment and regulation. And I think there's a really interesting connection here that I'd like to unpack more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
We can geek out on that another time. I've come to the conclusion that what people would call conscience in the past is essentially embodiment. It's a
mm,
contraction around evil and an opening and relaxing around love. But it's we can geek out
yes.
of that another time. But
Yes.
I
No,
just
well, just to take that a little bit further, and this kind of ties into anxiety as well, where I think like what anxiety is essentially just like tensing and contracting against whatever our experience is. And the opposite end of that is something like a jhana state in meditation, where you're just very, very open and like receiving whatever's coming, which can lead to, joy, bliss, rapture, etc. And I think that kind of like open, like tense or like very open and receptive spectrum is probably not talked about enough in this space.
Nice. That's jhana, not pajama, for any listeners who may have misheard that. You don't want a pajama state. So,
I mean, that sounds nice too. I'll take that.
that sounds nice, doesn't it? Sounds
Down
British and
regulate in
lovely,
your pajamas,
and
get a cup of tea and
just yeah, it sounds. We're back to the British thing. We're back to the British thing. Maybe that was me circling back round. I mean, you're in the States, right? Is everyone crazy now? How's it going? Last time I was there, I was in Austin. People were all over the shop. It's just
I
before
mean, if you don't look at the internet, everyone's fine.
everyone's just normal in life, just walking around, walking their dogs, having a nice time.
Life's great. Yeah, I'm
Especially in
here
Boulder.
here
Great
in
place.
Santa Cruz right now.
Oh, sorry, Santa Cruz.
And yeah, it's great. I mean, we live right by the ocean and right by the redwoods, so two fantastic places
Oh.
for co-regulating with nature.
Yeah, I call it ego regulating. Yeah, nice, nice. Let's talk about teaching. We're both teachers. I imagine you've been on a journey with teaching this stuff because
Mm.
you've had your own personal reasons for learning it. How has teaching informed your understanding of nervous systems?
Mm. How has teaching informed my understanding of nervous systems?
Yeah, teaching different students. I mean, obviously you have your own personal point of view on it. You had
Mm.
a deep personal story there, but as I imagined the last few years, you had quite a few students come through your course, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've had over 1,000 students at this point. I think like the more that I spend time teaching, the more that I try and make myself replaceable. Like I really think about how can I share tools and frameworks which will give people sufficient curiosity and excitement to keep going down this path for the rest of their lives. And I really like the approach of kind of co-creating or like encouraging students to design their own experiments because
Hmm.
they can read or listen to something that I say, but until they actually try it for themselves and then notice the difference and like reflect on it, it's not really going to like land in like their being. And so the faster that I can get people to kind of like design experiments or run, we call it like an edge challenge where we like find something that's
Yeah.
like at your edge and then use some of these practices as again experiments, carry it out, reflect on it, see how it went, and then keep going. And that's ultimately how I think about like, really the learning journey are these just like feedback loops. It's kind of, similar to the scientific method in a way. Um, and so to the degree that I can facilitate that process in students, I think is the degree to which I've like done my job well as a teacher. Um,
Nice. Like it. Like it.
yeah,
Oof. Moving towards close here, maybe a personal one. Did you just breed?
not yet. About to, hopefully.
About to. How, do you want to talk about that or
Pre-breeding right now. Yeah, preparing to breed.
preparing to breed? So you're far off?
My wife and I have just decided to start officially trying to
Ah,
breed. Yeah,
okay. Okay, we'll keep in touch then because I'll probably be going down that journey soon.
nice.
Nice. Is there anything you never get asked about on interviews that I should ask you about?
I mean, you've already hit a bunch of them from like sex and ethics and teaching. I feel like I'd be selfish if I asked for any more. No, I mean, I guess it's just fun to have a conversation like this with someone who's also steeped in this work, because it makes it much more fun for me, much more enlivening.
Right, you don't have
Um,
to say, did you know you have a nervous system? I mean, the listeners are great too. The listeners we have are really sophisticated usually. So,
you've you've
things have
you've
come a
tr-
long way, right?
you've
Like,
trained them well over 600 plus episodes.
not just me. I mean, like my life's got so much easier. We 10 years ago we started training coaches in embodiment. It was 10, 12 years ago. No one meditated, like one Buddhist, one meditation teacher in the group. Now it's like literally everyone in the group has at least tried meditation. So,
hmm
just to give
hmm
that as an example, right? Like yoga, various other things too. It,
hmm
it seems like this stuff is catching on.
I think so. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of exciting and challenging trends that are. I almost think like things are getting like increasingly like exciting and like optimistic and utopian at the same time, like
Yes.
dystopian and challenging, and we're like meeting like in the intersection of
Right,
like
right. The best possible time and the worst possible time
exactly, exactly,
simultaneously. Like that's how I sort of
exactly.
pitch it to students. I'm like, this is the best time to be alive and the worst.
Yep.
You got a book coming out? You got a book lined up? Is that I couldn't find a book. Is that on the horizon?
I have signed with an amazing agent. I think that I have a lot of projects going on. I have the Nervous System Mastery course. There's a State Shift app that we've just released, iPhone app recently that's like got a
Cool.
bunch of these up and down regulation practices that people can kind of access easily. There's a card deck on the way as well. So I do want to write a book, but I also want to do it well. I don't just want to write like another book. And I think that this theory around vascular computation and latches is something that feels like unique. It's essentially like exploring what is the biological mechanism for how trauma is stored in the body. And I think it's very compelling. And I
Yeah.
would potentially like to write a book that helps to kind of make this vascular computation theory, which is quite, technical and nerdy, more mainstream. So if I do write a book in the coming years, it'll probably be around that.
That's so it's like a spiritual Viagra joke in there somewhere, but ping me a link, man. That sounds good. That sounds good. All right, last question. What do you want to do before you and everyone you love dies?
I want to continue learning how to love well, I think. I think that's
Continue
kind of
learning
what it
how
comes
to
down
love
to.
well. That's a nice place to end it. So, Johnny, I recommend your course. I recommend your YouTube channel, Nervous System Mastery, the course. People put in Jonny Miller. It's Jonny without a H, right? Miller. Anywhere
Yes,
else
thank you
people
for
should
catching
go?
that. No, that's great. nsmastery.com is the homepage for the course, the app. There's like a free self-assessment on there, which is kind of helpful for people. So I'd recommend checking that out. And I'm also fairly active on Twitter, Johnny Jonny M1LLER. So if you want to harass me on there, feel free to.
Don't harass you on Twitter. That's you're a
I feel like
peaceful life in San
your podcast listeners would be like friendly harassing,
They're pretty nice. They're pretty nice. Shout out to all the nice podcast listeners, also on X. Okay, Johnny, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mark.